We're on.
Oldest family, needless to say, the bank has given an extraordinary introduction into what we are able to do, what we're going to do, and I'm going to express to us how we're going to do it. First of all, what we're doing, I want to say this, that this is a very profound insight that you're going to be given, but it's going to be fundamental in terms of the process by how it's going to be provided to you. I'm going to give us a framework for everything that we have been talking about, everything we will be talking about. Then you will be able to take this framework here and you will be able to set what we have been talking about and what we will be talking about down in this framework.
Okay.
Say it again. This is very, very, it's new information, but it's going to be simple because you're going to have a framework to sit what we are now going to talk about down into from what you have already been taught, online with the family and the thing we will talk about in the future. Now, I know that sounds very, uh, comprehensible, but it's not very easy to really understand what I'm trying to say in language or in words. But we're going to what? Simplify this so that you can understand. And we're going to go all the way back, to, we're going to pick up an everlasting life. Abba Ben me rise from thought to reality. And what we're going to do, we're going to take our time and walk you through this so you will have a fundamental understanding, but it's going to be way beyond, any basic kind of stuff that you will be hearing. You will be hearing things that is very, very profound, never heard before, but it's going to be fundamental because you got a framework to set it in. Okay? You'll be able to make the connection very, very easy. One of the major problems has been that I don't care who the teacher has been, who the teacher will be, you have to understand that we have been programmed to see things as opposites. And so your struggle is always trying to make the connection to the opposites. And how do you make a connection to an opposite? How do you do that? The connection is not with an opposite. The connection is with what? That which is harmonic.
That's right.
Which is in unity, in oneness. That's the connection that you got to make. So in simple terms, we've been in duality trying to what? Understand things outside of duality. So we're going to pick up on page 183 of Everlasting Life, from Thought to Reality by Abba Ben. Page 183, it gives a scriptural reference here of Isaiah 61 and 3. And I'm going to read the scripture, but then I'm going to what? Delve into it from that point on. It says, arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. Now, when you hear that, you have religious connotations. You hear that reference there, because you're now thinking in terms of God and Satan, right and wrong. Go to the next verse. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. For the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. Now, here we go again. We know we've been taught about darkness and light, but I want you to follow now, because you got a different language, but the language, I'm saying, is depicting the reality of what really is occurring here. And the nations shall come to thy light, and kings to their brightness and their rising. Now, let's stop for a moment. How many nations have come to us, and what has been our brightness that drew anybody to us as a Hebrew Israelite, as a Christian, as a Muslim, as a Jew? Name me one. So if we ask ourselves a simple question there, if these writings here are historical, and then we are now in the end of that historical period of time, would not that have to happen?
Yeah.
That would have to. Other than that, you would have to say it's a false prophet. It's written, it's not the truth. But we got to understand here, because it's very difficult to have to what? Look at things that you've been taught and what you've been made to believe, more so what you've been made to believe, because your belief, has really been dictating what it is that you think you understand and what we think we understand. So it's hard to what? Look beyond our belief, because your belief determines, you understand, basically what you believe that you're going to do and how you're going to do it. So it's quite challenging. We know this, and this is why, it's been such a, challenge and difficult for us to what? Understand, the difference between holism and dualism. Simple term, but hard to understand.
Right.
Hard to understand. And less known to my hard to understand, even harder to what? Comprehend and what? Let go of.
Right.
So we're going to pick up here where it says, to be defined as dead. Now, nobody want to admit that they've been dead, but Eitai just got to explain about what the form was prior to our descent and our fall. So what?
Yes.
So now, if we're not in that form, what would you call that? Would you call that life? To be defined as dead in the spiritual, and I'm going to be, interpreting different words in the spiritual or in the energetic context. Spiritual as energetic context means having no knowledge of God. Now, no knowledge of God. Now, we know our, traditional belief about God. We changed the name to Yah, and then we thought we were saying the same thing, but we didn't. Another level.
Right.
Having no knowledge of God. Now listen to this here. Double-minded. No knowledge of God. Now think about it now. If you're saying you having no knowledge of God, but you are double-minded, well then whatever this concept of God is, you don't have an absolute understanding of it. A clear understanding of it. You are what? Dual in your way of looking at it. You are dual in your knowledge base. I'm reading what he says here. Having no knowledge of God, double-minded, equals zero where God is concerned. Now, Eitai just was telling us about how we fell and what we fell from. We went below zero.
That's right.
We went below zero. But you can't fathom that because you keep looking at this flesh, as being the determiner of everything.
That's right.
You got to look at this energetically.
Yes.
Continuing on. Being in a helpless predicament. Now, I want to know, is humanity in a helpless predicament?
Absolutely.
No question. No question.
So it's because of your knowledge base. But what is your knowledge base? Your knowledge base is dualism. That's your knowledge base. That's your knowledge base. And that means what? Zero in respect to wholeness. Okay? I'm using wholeness, as what you would call God or divinity, okay? One no longer hears, sees, discerns, or moves. Now, when we start talking about wholeness and divinity, you can count the ones that is moving, the one that is,
Yes.
the one is discerning. This is the problem because they in a state of dualism and you just don't hear. You just don't perceive. You just don't understand. Said the African American community today is lying helpless in its grave. Now, you say, well, what kind of grave? You know, we look down in America and we see, African people all over the world, not just America. We had tend to use America because we came from America, but it's all, the human population for that matter, is lying helpless in its grave, covered with the dirt of false gods,
Mm-hmm.
doctrine,
Mm-hmm.
worship, false history, envy,
Mm-hmm.
strife, disunity,
Mm-hmm.
disrespect, hate of one another, and a diet fit for the dead. Now that's the grade that everybody's in.
Mm-hmm. Big time, Nasik.
Dang, that's
That's the grade. Now you got to ask yourself, do we have to ask ourselves today, where do we lie within all of those, you understand, descriptions of what, you understand, determines an individual that's double-minded.
Mm-hmm.
So now, if you got strife, you got disunity. If you got disrespect, you got hate. All
Yes.
that tells me that's dualism.
Yes.
That's dualism. When the light of God comes into the world, I'm going to use this in the knowledge of divinity, okay, it is hated because it reveals the evil, that have been hidden in darkness. In other words, your true identity, your true understanding has been what? Inverted and is what? Hidden from you. And it left you without the knowledge of who you are, how you got into this predicament, and
right.
certainly
Right.
have no knowledge of how to get out of it.
That's right.
The world only loves its own. Now we know that. Hate loves hate.
Right.
Hate, disunity loves disunity. Unity and disunity don't have nothing in common.
Mm-mm.
You know, it loves you because you are the same mind, double-minded. Okay, if you were not children of darkness, born of an adulterated doctrine, it would not love you. In contrast, if you were not one and the same with this world, you could not love it. Your preference is darkness. Your fear to come into the light becomes your evil deeds, because your evil deeds would be exposed. Now, Eitai was just talking about, we have to understand the divine feminine, in both, states, so to speak, the whore, and divinity. Because if not, then you're not going to understand the division that has occurred,
Right.
the inversion that has occurred. So we're trying to put this in a framework where
Right.
you begin to fit everything down into it as we continue. The greatest obstacle, this is the main point I'm driving at here. The greatest obstacle to an individual being born again, letting go of duality, and what? Remarrying, you understand, divinity and wholeness is the embarrassment that he has to face concerning his own past. You know, you stop thinking about, you know, now to say that what I was, you know, deceived and I was wrong, that's an embarrassment now because no one wants to feel that they put all their time, all their money, all their effort into something that was not, you understand, productive, did not bring the desired results.
That's right.
Having no knowledge before family, having to acknowledge before family and friends, peers and subordinates that has been that we have been wrong. First of all, the wife gonna get mad with you because you didn't cause her to leave her family and cause her to, you know.
Right.
Yes.
So you
Yes.
can't admit that, you know. So you just what? Push on, you understand, for the sake of pushing on, but you know something ain't right. You know, but you don't know what to do. So the best you can do what? And you get to a certain age, you just are completely giving in because I'm too old to do this or that.
Okay.
Time to go back to church.
Right. Yeah, man. That's what happens. Back to church.
Right.
You know? So, and you know, when we look at this becomes very embarrassing. Continuing on. This is definitely the quandary that confronted Nicodemus, the acknowledged scholar and honorable member of the high legal body in Yeshua's day. He was undoubtedly shaken at the discovery that he was a dead man, having to seek a new birth that he may enter into the world of wholeness, divinity. Here it says the world of God. My people, too, are trapped in the shackles of titles and positions of honor. That is so true.
No question.
So true.
Yes, sir.
Eitai, you feel me?
Hey, look, it's self-evident, Nasik.
No question.
Without the God mind, the mind of wholeness and divinity, and I don't want to use the word mind, we want to use consciousness of wholeness and divinity.
Right.
They cannot understand life's purpose nor fulfill their mission in life, because this void in their understanding their lives have plummeted to a low level of guesswork, forever vacillating between good and evil. Now, I know you've been hearing him, but what did he just say? Duality, right? Good and evil. But I've been saying it every step of the way. So I want you to understand that you just got to grasp language in its power. This is what we're dealing with today. So that we can understand the utilization of the power of language. You know, so we want to start here, you know, and bring you into the understanding of a framework that you can sit, and then you can put everything you've been hearing online with the family, sit it down in there to make your evaluation.
Yes.
As whether this is correct, and this is what you should be doing, you know, and everything that you will be hearing, you'll be able to sit it down in there. And it will speak to you in unity, wholeness, and oneness.
Yes.
It will not speak to you in duality.
Absolutely.
Gotta get used to that.
Right.
You know? And we repetitious with this because This is what is required right now.
That's right. That's right, Nasik. Just go ahead on, do what
Mhm.
you got to do.
So the utilization of the power of language. What we are going to use as the framework to introduce to the family the concept of how all things will fit within the structure of wholeness, which is our divinity. I want to show you how to do this. We must begin with the true understanding of the power of language and the capability of what it is able to make you perceive through the sense organs. Language capability of what it, the power of what it has, within it to cause you to see things through the sense organ.
Right.
Language is just a symbol used, which is given to us to cause us to look at things as dividing nature into parts and action. This is what language is given to you for. Language is given as a symbol used to give us the ability to look at things as dividing nature into parts and action. Now let's stop right there. Dividing things into parts and action. First, let's look at the definition of nature. Okay? And we start talking about dividing things, we got to think about dimensions, okay? Dimensions of nature. Dimensions of nature. So language again now. Language. So it's a symbol to cause one to divide nature into parts and action. So let's look at dimensions. And like I say, we introducing some new things, but Eitai, could you hold for a moment there? Okay. So we're talking about dividing nature into parts and action. We're going to look at the word dimension. The etymology means to measure out. To measure out. Okay? Number one, to measure in one direction. To measure out is the etymology. First definition is to measure in one direction. Specifically, now listen to this, one of three coordinates determining a position in space, of four coordinates determining a position in space and time. Now, I'm not going to get into decoding that and simplifying that. I just want to give you the definition today. When we get into this, past the introduction, we will definitely come back and simplify that by decoding what we're talking about here. Let me just give you a definition of the word coordinate so that you will kind of you can begin thinking on it. Okay, we're going to use the verb form, and it was coined in 1665. And definition one says to put in the same order or rank. Hear me now. To put in the same order or rank. Definition two, to bring into common action, movement, or condition. Harmonize. Okay? Continuing on. Three, to attach so as to form a coordination complex, to be or become coordinate, especially so as to act together in a smooth, concerted way. Now, again, as I said, we'll go over the definition again, dimension, because we're going to break this down and simplify this. At the margin means to measure out. Definition 1. A measure in one direction, specifically one of 3 coordinates determining a position in space, of 4 coordinates determining a position in space and time. Okay? Now, so we were saying about this language now, what it does. It has the ability to divide nature into parts and actions. And let's look at nature now, because we're talking about determining space and time. And just in simplicity, what have we been utilizing, to determine space and time? We got to see where we've been at in our understanding. We had no understanding of it, truthfully. We had absolutely no understanding of it. We were depending upon the physicists, the scientists, or those that had knowledge of those things to give us, but their job wasn't to give us no understanding. Their job was to continue to what? Manipulate, you understand, the knowledge that they had to what? Keep us in the predicament, the condition we were in. Gotta remember that now.
That's correct.
Nature. Okay, 14th century. Same as the word dimension, 14th century. It says the inherent character or basic constitution of a person or thing. Now think for a moment. We're talking about an inherent character, an inherent character. Not, you understand, a character that was what? Given to you from, an extrinsic or extraneous, you understand, perception. An inherent, intrinsic, okay? Character of a person. That means you already, you understand, when you are born into this, world, there was an inherent, you understand, power and character that you had had to be what? Neutralized. Other than that, it would not be in this dimension of what? Physicality and a helpless position. Couldn't have happened.
An innate power.
Right, innate power. Excellent. The essence of something. Okay? The essence of something. The disposition of something. The temperament of something. Now, everybody, you understand, you got an even temperament. Then you got them that doesn't have an even temperament. You got a very volatile temperament, and so forth and position. This is the inherent character that, most of our people have today. They don't have an even or balanced or harmonic temperament or position. They either what? One way or the other. A creative force of power in the universe. Talking about nature being a creative force of power, and we're going to slash the word force out. A creative power in your being. A creative power within your being, your universe.
Yes.
Okay? An inner power or some of such power in an individual. So that means now there is an inner power. They call that a character, but it's really the creative, you understand, innate nature of you as being divine. That's what we're really talking about. So now the objective is to what? Divide and separate that and take it out of that what? Divinity, that unity and oneness and put it into what? Duality, conflict. And we see that's exactly what. Now, you said, well, language does this. Language does this. Keep in mind, we're talking about language doing this now. So we're going to now take a look at a example given. And this example is taken from Biocentrism by Robert Lanza. And we start on page 37, which is the example. It said, quote, if you consciously try to access that a luminous energy field, I'll read again, if you consciously try to access that luminous energy field, visual part of the brain, you might at first be frustrated. You might tap the back of your skull and feel a particular vacuous sense of nothingness. But that's because it was unnecessary exercise. You are already accessing the visual portion of the brain with every glance you take. I'm gonna stop there.
Right. Right.
So what has happened to us in this physical realm that we were already accessing something within ourselves that we didn't even know that was there and that was already accessing it. And we was trying to access. I would think that depicts a complete, you know what I'm saying, unawareness, or what you would call a dead state.
Unconscious dead state.
That's exactly how you would have to look at that. Something that you already done access, that you trying to access and don't even know it exists. Continuing on. Look now at anything. Follow us. Look at anything. Custom, you have been customarily taught to believe. It's that customs has told you, told us, that what we see is out there. It's outside of you, outside of yourself. And such a viewpoint is fine and necessary in terms of language and utility. Are you hearing me now?
Right.
About language. But only through language, you know, are you going to try to conceptualize this here. But Eitai been teaching us about, you know, how to access without, you understand, utilizing what? Language like that. Haven't you, Eitai?
Absolutely.
So let's continue now.
Now see,
Kind of talk to me.
just to put a fine point on that, where he talks about that is fine because of language, because see, we all have to communicate, and we use terms like over there, out there, in here, but those are just conventions of language that we've all agreed that there is something external. This is how this is how unconscious we've become. So when he says that, yeah, this is all right because we got to communicate, you know, using this language, we got to use terms that we're all familiar with.
Right.
And so we have to describe things as external, or nobody would know what we was talking about.
Absolutely.
If we were enlightened enough or inclined, you know, to be inclined to have that comprehension that there is nothing outside of us.
Right.
Right.
So now you can see, back to our title of introduction, the utilization of the power of language.
Absolutely.
You know, you got to understand what we're talking about here, because once you've fallen into, or you are descended into, devolved into, fallen into, you know, this physical plane, and a method of communication was necessary.
Right.
Absolutely. We're not that it's not that we're just trying to make you understand how language, is utilized,
Right.
what it can do, it can allow you to communicate sometimes pretty simplistically, and other times not communicate at all. What you think you're communicating, you know, you're using the normal wording and everything, but you're just not getting through to the person, And all of this has to do with what? Realms of energy consciousness. That's what it has to do with. Continuing on, it says, customs have told us that what we see is out there, outside ourselves. And such a viewpoint is fine and necessary in terms of language and utility.
Right.
And you quote, please pass the butter that's over there.
Right.
So if the butter's on the table and you need the butter, you got to have communicating saying, I need the butter, please give me the butter. So language is necessary. We clear.
Mm-hmm.
But make no mistake, now this is what I want us to understand, but make no mistake, the visual image of that butter, that is the butter itself, actually exists only inside your brain. Now, stop and think about that for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's what we're struggling with. How is it inside my brain? I see it on the table. Let's go back to the sense organs, what we stated up here earlier. Let's go back to the sense organs. We stated we must begin with the true understanding of the power of language and the capacity of what it is able to make you perceive through the sense organ. Started off saying that. Continue on. But make no mistake, the visual image of that butter, that is the butter itself, actually exists only inside your brain. That is the location, not outside. It is the only place images are perceived and cognized. It's the only place.
Right.
Hold your horses. Stay with us. Some may imagine that there are two worlds, one out there and a separate one being cognized inside the skull.
Come on.
Now here we go. Duality, separation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Talking about these terms, trying to understand. See, but the two world models is a myth. You mean to tell me it ain't two worlds? Says two worlds is a myth. Nothing is perceived except the perception themselves. And nothing exists outside of consciousness. Oh, right there.
Right.
So on a low level of consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
let's start off at 20. Okay, that's the lowest level. That's in the genitalia area, okay? And now let's just say Eitai, Malkiel, Devora, you understand? They are what? Cognizing things, at, let's say, 250.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Neutrality.
Mm-hmm.
What they're seeing and how they perceive and what they understand, you are completely worlds away in connection.
Mm-hmm.
Worlds away. Because what? The level of consciousness of 20 and the level 250 have nothing in common in terms of unity.
Right. Right.
in terms of unity. Okay? Only one visual reality exists, but we saying two. And there it is, right there. The outside world is therefore located within the brain or consciousness. Of course, this is so astounding for many people, even if it is obvious to those who study the brain, that it becomes possible to overthink the issue and come up with an attempt of refutation to refute it. Yea, but what about someone born blind? Question. And what about touch? They aren't out there. How can we feel them? None of that changes the reality. Touch, too, of course, only within consciousness or quote unquote the brain. Every aspect of that butter, its existence on every level is not outside of one's being. And this is going to be very, very, when we get to a portion, we're going to get to a portion in this where we're going to explain something about these dimensions. It's going to be very, very critical. So if you're taking notes, make a point here. And when we come back to the dimension, you heard, third dimension, and they say this is the physical plane that we're in, 3 dimensions, right?
Right.
We're going to talk about that and put this in perspective so you can see and understand its existence. Every level is not outside one's being, it's within you. Is that its implication destroys the entire house of cards worldview that we have embraced all of our lives.
Right.
Well, this whole thing of duality, the worldview is duality. And now if you talk about destroying that, that's a new world being created. It's a new world being created.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's think about the term that say the end of the world. Well, the end of the world is the end of the world of dualism. That's the
Yes.
end. That is the end.
Correct.
Yes. Yes.
He said, if this is consciousness, our brain right in front of us, then consciousness extends indefinitely to all that is cognized, calling into question the nature and reality of something we will devote an entire chapter to, is space. Going back to the dimensions again,
Right.
position and space and time. All this gonna become clear when we finish.
Mm-hmm.
If that before us is consciousness, okay, calling into question the chapter of space. If space is nothing but consciousness, it can change the area of scientific focus from the nature of a cold, inert, external universe. Issues such as how your consciousness relates to mine and to that of animals. We keep talking about wholeness and everything being connected, but it just cannot be conceptualized and understood. You understand? When you in duality, it absolutely makes no sense.
Right.
Let's hold for a moment here and ask us any questions, comments. It is now, as you gain the understanding of it, you're going to see a framework wherein that everything will have to fit within this framework. but we're giving you introduction to it so that you can see. If no further, we're going to continue on. Now, we're talking about consciousness. We're talking about consciousness. Of course, what we have been taught and made to believe about consciousness, it is just quote unquote awareness. Well, if it was just awareness, what is it that we do not have awareness of? How could consciousness just be awareness? And if it was prevalent within everybody, what would we not be aware of? You know, so they done played, you know, a real trick. You know, first of all, in the Hebrew language, you know, you have to look at consciousness and knowledge, and knowledge is consciousness. You know? So if you have, you know what I'm saying, zero knowledge of, you know, holism, and you got what, you know, 20 years of what study, you know, and the knowledge of duality, you're going to defend duality as being the only knowledge base.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have no knowledge of wholeness, you know. So it's been just like that for us. We have had no knowledge of the very things that has occurred to us based upon the process of how it occurred and the true knowledge of it. So we had to go according to the programming, you know, in this physicality. So when we look at consciousness, you know, as the creative force and energy, then it takes on a whole nother perspective, a whole nother understanding. It's no longer just, you understand, cold, inert, you know, external, you know, uh, awareness or knowledge of something. It becomes very nigh unto you. It becomes actually the essence of you. Now that's a whole nother perception. Then you can begin to understand how, you know, things relate, you know, and how all things are connected together. But we will put aside for the moment questions of the unity of consciousness. This is the key point. The unity of consciousness. No one sees. Let me just give you a brief definition of unity, because we're talking about, you know, the unity of consciousness, and we're going to put aside the questions of the unity of consciousness. Okay.
See,
Okay. So when we talk about this consciousness, and it's really, you know, essential that we really grasp, you know, this concept of consciousness. And when you start talking about the unity of consciousness, you know, and I was going to give you a definition of unity so you can kind of see the significance of consciousness has been a major challenge, okay? Because consciousness has just been for awareness. And so if you have some knowledge that I don't have, and I'm saying, I'm aware of something that you don't have, and vice versa. Definition of consciousness. They are now in 1632. Okay? And this is, I took this from Webster, Webster's ninth edition dictionary. And this was used by Albert Benjamin years ago. And, you know, and it always stuck with me in terms of why did he use this? Out of all the definitions, he used definition number 5. Definition number 5 states upper level of mental life, this, of which the person is aware. Mental life as contrasted with unconscious processes. So here you figure here, if you understand the inversion was it is your true nature that has been inverted and placed in the subconscious. It knows all things and is connected, it connects you with all things, but that's the element of you that is you're not aware of. Okay? You're not conscious of, and you're not, you understand, cognizant of. So that element now, is not the upper level of mental life. What has become the upper level of what is being defined as the upper level of mental life is what you would call, quote unquote, self-consciousness, or, the consciousness that you've acquired in the process of your programming. That has become now, quote unquote, the upper level of mental life. But it has to be upper because it's above that which is what you are unaware of, which is below. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about unity now, if one is upper and the other is lower, where's the unity at? You got division there. You don't have unity. So he says, go back what the brother says, let us suffice to say that any overarching unity of consciousness, overarching, meaning dominating or embracing all else. So when you talk about overarching, dominating, embracing all else, unity of consciousness, you're talking about what? It being the superior, you understand, awareness and knowledge of all things. And that we just cannot even begin to conceptualize because what? It is not difficult or impossible to prove. Now, how am I going to prove it? But it is fundamentally incompatible with dualistic language. So here you are in duality. There is absolutely no way, there is a compatibility. There is a what relationship. There is no relationship in duality of the unity of consciousness. So if there is no relationship in the unity of consciousness and duality, how do two people who say they are conscious beings start to pursue one another and start to like one another, but they cannot remain with one another? They end up getting a divorce or a release. Now that stands for itself, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Nasik.
So we're beginning to start to look at things from a holistic, perspective, which would give you a relationship because it's what connected, interrelated, integrated. But now when there is what? Division, an upper and a lower, there's what? Disconnection, disunity,
Right.
disharmony. You follow what I'm saying?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We got to understand, and you go back and read that again because I want us to understand. He said, let us suffice to say, any overarching unity of consciousness, meaning dominating or embracing all else, is not just difficult or impossible to prove, but is fundamentally incompatible with dualistic languages, which adds an additional burden to that which is incompatible, of making it difficult to grasp with life. So if you just trying to use some kind of logical, and you see, this is what's been happening on the line. We've been trying to use our logical, you understand, way, which is a dualistic way of trying to understand holism.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It can't work. It can't work. It just won't. It won't happen. It just won't happen. Two different worlds: the world of dualism and the world of holism. Two different worlds.
Yes.
Nothing in common. Incompatible. So this kind of gives you, and you see now, we did the class about divine marriage, and you can now see why.
Right.
You know, you can
Yes.
clearly see why it can't work. There is
Right.
no relationship gonna work when there's
Yes.
no connection at all.
Right.
You just do something physically to what? You know, for gratification of your physical element. That's
Yes.
all.
Yes.
And when they say, you know, when the feeling is gone, you understand, that's the end of the relationship, ain't it?
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And everybody's going on this feeling simply because what then happened is that you've been divided, you've been separated, you're in division, you're not in unity. So really you're in a dead state. You're in a dead state. You know. It goes on to say, why? The reason why. Okay, you talk about difficult to grasp with logic and incompatible because of dualistic languages. You say, why? Language was created to work exclusively through symbolism and to divide nature into parts and action. Now that's what we started off with. Now that we done walk through and we come right back to how nature has been divided and how your action in respect to nation, you know, and to nature is now, you understand, divided. So we want to ask us any questions before we go any further. I think we've went about an hour and a half. If there's any question or comments, please feel free to ask them at this point, and we will consider. We're halted for the day. We will continue on. Any questions or comments, family?
I'm good now, see.
Good. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good.
Good. Good.
I'm with you, Nasik.
Excellent. 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 Excellent.
Can you
We're
give
gonna
the definition of nature again?
definition of nature. Yes, I will. Okay. The inherent character or basic constitution of a person or thing. Inherent character, a basic constitution of a person or thing. Essence, disposition, temperament. 2, a creative power. And they say force, but we using the word power. In the universe, a creative power within you as, you know, the universe. Okay? B, an inner power or the sum of such power in an individual, not outside of you, in you. That's what nature is. So you're really saying that when you talk about dividing nature, you're talking about dividing, you know, within yourself, what you would call, and it's a little bit more specific when we go to the last part we're going to cover today. It's coming from Power versus Force, page 274 in the blue book by David Hawkins. He steps to it just a little bit more in terms of the division that takes place. So we'll cover that, and then we will close out this part for the day.
Nasik,
Yes, sir.
you had mentioned something earlier about I think you mentioned Eitai and Devore and somebody else, and you were saying something about if they was on 250 and above, and if somebody was on At 20, I thought.
250, right? I said 20.
Right.
Yeah, 20.
Uh-huh.
Now what did you say on that? That they
What I
wouldn't
was
have
saying,
nothing?
I was saying that someone of the knowledge, of consciousness at 250, that is what you would call neutrality. And someone at, the conscious level of 20, that is shame. There's absolutely no way the individual of neutrality and the individual under the influence of the consciousness of shame going to see things the same way. Under shame, he must see things in what? Opposition to himself.
That's
He
right.
must see things as dichotomies. He can't no way see things because his predicament, his conscious level will not allow him to see things at a, as being unified and being holistic. That's what I was saying. Is that
Okay.
clear?
Yeah, that's clear. And I was thinking, I was thinking what I'm experiencing now, even and the reason I asked that question because I'm experiencing where I am now versus where with people that are around me that's not where I'm at. And I use the people, which is my children. It's getting difficult to I mean, if we just don't have nothing in common like that, as far as even having a conversation or dealing with each other. They had talked about, and I'm just sharing this with. They had talked about bettering our relationship.
Talking to us and keeping us aware of we got to become masters at this here. We got to
Right.
master it. So if we don't, then the masses will not have a chance. Starting with your personal family. And I
Right.
know how it is. Believe me, I'm gonna give you an example of the difficulty. Particular brother, we were very close. We work out together and everything. He came over today while we were working out, and he asked the question, "What am I doing, and what can be done?" You know what I'm saying? With what I understand being implemented in my personal life, and I was explaining to him what I'm doing, but he could not hear it. He
Right.
could not hear and I understood why. So he recognized that he couldn't. So he went for a walk, and then he came back and he continued to work out. So then finally, when we left from the workout place, we came to the bike because I wanted him to see something. I told him I was going to email it to him, but he said, "No, I'm going to go by the house and want to watch it." It was only 8 minutes long. So I played it for him. And you know what? He could not grasp it. He was so distracted by what was in his thinking
Yeah.
and began to tell me about, what I'm saying, the holy date is present. And
Mm.
he's wrestling with the whole idea of making an offering because he knows something is wrong. He knows that ain't right, but he could not focus simply because what we are talking about and what he's asking, he's frustrated about it because he really cannot grasp it. And that's got him torn apart. So I'm sitting here listening to him, and it was really a challenge for me to be able to give him, my total attention, and hone in on what he was saying to try to provide him with some knowledge that he could possibly begin the process. I know exactly what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But if we don't master this ourselves and understand it, we will not have any quote unquote patience, to deal with anybody that does not.
Mm-hmm.
And then that means you are not in line yourself then.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, Nathan, very, very clear. Very clear.
Okay. Hold on.
We're gonna close out with this point. quote, when we look at the decline of the levels of truth of the world's great religions, we notice that those that are most yin have remained relatively pure throughout the ages. Yin means feminine. Whereas those that are more yang, masculine, involved in worldly affairs, have degraded markedly until the militant extremist faction of the most aggressive religion has actually sunk below the critical level of integrity at 200. The more dualistic the creed, here's the key. You got yin and yang, that's dual, okay? The more dualistic the creed, the greater its vulnerability to misinterpretation seems to be. Dualism promotes a split between belief and action. And that's what I was saying earlier
Right.
about this what? It's the divides nature into parts and action. So now we're looking at it from a belief and an action. A belief and an action. Okay, so when your belief is one thing and your action is another, that means you are what? Double-minded. But you're going to have to understand everybody that is dualistic, they're already double-minded and they are already split between their beliefs and nature, okay, and their action, their beliefs and their action. Why? Because your actions should not be dual. Your actions should be what? Unified. Your belief should be unified. You should be one. You should be under the influence of wholeness. But it's not. You follow what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
So, when that occurs, he says, split between action, belief and action, and a disorientation of the level of truth. When this occurs, the spiritual essence can be confused in translation into physical expression. So now you see now the action is wrong because what? They have been what? Disorientated. And when you become disorientated, you've lost contact with time, place, position, authority, the whole bit. You are what? Thrown off balance. You out of tune. You're out of balance. So when that occurs, your physical expression is not in harmony with what? Unity, oneness, wholeness. Thus, the conceptual Christian soldier of the spirit becomes through a distorted literal translation, and this is what then happened to us.
Right.
This is what me and the brother was trying. He was trying to talk about a literal translation and literal thing that happened. I wanted to sit in here and tell him that none of that is true. That's not literal. It's allegorical.
Right.
But he in the literal translation.
Right.
But what happens then? You become a self-justified battlefield killer. Well, this is what he's struggling with. He don't want to be a battlefield killer. Wrong, but hold it for a moment.
Got you, Nasik. You on?
Family, we've touched up on some most pertinent information today. And again, and I know you've heard these things before, but we're trying to create this framework so that you can clearly see where everything will have to fit within this context and structure if you're going to clearly understand and find our way out of this duality into unity, oneness, and wholeness and divinity. This is a framework, and
Yeah,
everything will have to fit within. If it don't fit within this here, you know it's what? Under the influence of what Elias was just saying
that's right.
as duality, you know,
That's
because
right.
all of it is an extension of you, extensions of your consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
That's so with that family, you know, peace and then wholeness.